So we have one.
You're live.
So this is Senate Transportation, Thursday, February 8th. No, it is Thursday, February 8th, yeah. So we're trying to finish the DMV bill. Let's start with the new issue, which is the blue light thing. So we'll take our language that we have about blue lights, and then Senator Chittenden had a constituent talk about an issue that we inadvertently closed. So either Senator Chittenden can explain it or Anthea can explain it.
Up to you.
So a very engaged constituent who is also in law enforcement just reached out. He's been following the scenarios, and he definitely supports what we're doing about taking away the permits, so requiring a permit for municipal police entities. But inadvertently, it is argued that we are taking out, and this is where Anthea will correct me, we are striking language that allows for a certified police officer to still apply for a permit for their personal vehicles, and he just makes the case that there are circumstances, and he's a Williston police officer, that there are circumstances where they do need these for tactical teams as well as for crash reconstructions. And so all he's asking is to continue to keep the opportunity for them to pursue a permit with the commissioner through the current process. Did I summarize that?
Okay. You totally summarized it.
Which makes sense, because
Are you
unless
Anthea's replacement? Oh.
Anthea's job is to take what he said and put it in
Yes. And
statutory language.
I will put that up on the screen. So yeah, Senator Perchik asked me this morning, like, sort of, how did this happen? Because currently they can get a permit, but currently the language says that it's like certified law enforcement officers and constables and things like that that can apply for the permit. So when the language was shifted in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill that was proposed by the department, it had the government-owned law enforcement vehicles not needing a permit, and it had the constables only being able to get the rear red light, but it left out the universe, which I didn't know was a universe until you forwarded that email to me this morning, of certified law enforcement officers who have a blue light on a personal vehicle, not on a government-owned vehicle. So what you would be doing, and this is on page 14 of the 32-page document that I handed out.
14?
Page 14, yeah. Oh, I'm in the wrong document. Here, page 14. You'll see green, oh, yours is gray. You'll see gray highlighted language. It's green up on the screen. Adding a new subdivision that would say law enforcement vehicles owned or leased by a certified law enforcement officer. So not owned or leased by the government, but owned or leased by that certified law enforcement officer. And then it goes on to say, when satisfied as to the condition and use of the vehicle, the commissioner shall issue and may revoke for cause permits for sirens and emergency warning lamps in the following manner. And then the sirens and warning lamps that are available are the same ones that are available for the government-owned law enforcement vehicles. And then subdivision B talks about how the commissioner needs to record the information regarding both the owner of the vehicle and the applicant for the permit. This is language that is an existing statute. So I basically took what was existing statute, added it back in for this new subdivision, only applicable to personally owned certified law enforcement vehicles. The DMV hasn't seen this language. I just drafted it this morning. It also hasn't been edited, but they're listening, and I can also send it to them to see if they have any concerns with it.
Okay.
But I think it addresses the sort of like the sliver that was left out in the new language that your constituent
Could
identified.
I ask, because a lot of volunteer firefighters have private, personal, that they have lights on or sirens when they're going to a fire. We haven't done anything to.
You have not changed what happens for them. So if you go down to page 16, you'll see emergency services vehicles owned and operated by the government. Those are authorized without permit.
Right.
And then you have emergency services vehicles not owned and operated by the government. So that would be the personally owned volunteer firefighter vehicle. And that is the identical language that we just saw above, but when satisfied as to the condition and use of the vehicle, the commissioner shall issue and may revoke for cause permits and sirens. So their situation doesn't change. They still need a permit. And that was a known subset of signal lamped and sirened vehicles, so it wasn't something that I
Unless it's an
inadvertently looked at.
amber light, then you don't need a,
Correct, you do not need a permit for an
We
amber
got
light.
that one, huh? The amber light.
yeah.
You don't need a permit for
I
an
do have a
amber
little
signal lamp.
magnetic amber light.
You know,
And then they're required for.
Batteries are out right now, so.
all right.
So,
That makes sense.
nothing else-
I don't think we intended to, have that collateral impact here, so I'm glad
I think it's a good catch.
Yeah,
someone was looking at this.
yeah, that would have been it. And then if D&B has, they'll let us know, but, or, you know, or they can fix it in the house, or we can do an amendment if it turns out to be a.
So what I will do is I will, stop sharing my screen, so you don't see me doing it, but I will email it to them, right now and just say, please look at page 14. Okay, so that's gonna take you, and hopefully I can talk and do this at the same time, to, the second document that I handed out, which is going to be the 7-page document. The new language that you're gonna see is on page 5, adding in the requirement for contact information for failures. And then there is a new subsection on page 7, contact information. The Department of Motor Vehicles shall include contact information, and Senator Mazza, I'll put this up on the screen right now. The Department of Motor Vehicles shall include contact information for whom at the Department of Motor Vehicles to contact with questions about the annual safety inspection and the periodic inspection manual on all notices of failure issued by inspection mechanics certified by the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles. And then for the effective dates, sections 13B and 13C, that is the statutory change and the rulemaking requirement for the tinted windows, that would take effect on July 1 of 2026. And then nothing else to your side proposals have changed. So I think your decision points are, do you like the new green language on contact information? Do you like the shift in effective dates? And then do you want to include all or some of this in your bill?
Can you put the rusted rotor language? I don't think we ever, as a committee, went through that
You're
information.
not on the screen.
Hello, Commissioner?
Oh,
Thank you. Under angle.
You go so fast that it's easier when you have it on the screen. Okay, I see
There
what
we
you
go.
said.
Okay. Sorry about that, Senator Mazza. So I'll just backtrack so Senator Mazza can see what I did. So the new language from yesterday to today is adding the contact information for failures. It's being added to the section heading on page 5. And then the language itself is this new subsection C on page 7, saying that they need to include the contact information for someone at the DMV for failures. The shift in effective dates for July 1 of 2026 for the tinted windows. That's what I did so far, and now we are.
wouldn't it, shall include, I don't know, I don't know, the person to contact at the Department of Motor Vehicles with questions, or not questions.
You could say that.
But to whom is kind of for whom.
So I said.
I know, I'm back to the anything with a lean.
So saying person obviously is more than just like an individual human being. I don't know if you were thinking like, it's gonna say contact Captain Scott Davidson and like, here's his phone number, but
No,
it also could be like lead. I would say this is more flexible in saying like, it's the link to a form that you can fill out that goes to maybe like routes it to the right region. So I don't view that as being like a human being to contact, so.
It says
we've
for
certainly-
whom.
So for whom is because the editors changed my who to whom. So I can't.
I
take
realize
credit
it's
for the
object
and.
of a proposition, but, it's just kind of awkward.
Do you,
You know, that the Department of Motor Vehicles shall provide,
Relevant contact
the,
information.
the contact information, I don't know.
do you wanna take out for whom? Shall include contact information at the Department of Motor.
Yes,
Relevant contact information,
no,
that could be a website.
well, shall include contact information, to me, relevant would modify contact.
And you could just say
rather than
for-
relevant.
Contact or,
For who to contact.
or just with questions. Contact information, yeah, you gotta add something in there.
Contact
We gotta give the house something to do.
Oh, well, I'm glad that editor corrected for whom. It's just a little awkward. Shall provide the contact information.
Contact information.
I think this makes sense. It's just good practice, so.
So maybe say contact information. The Department of Motor Vehicles shall include contact information at the Department of Motor.
We got it twice.
Yeah, you could,
Shall provide contact information.
you could just say who at the Department of Motor Vehicles to contact with questions about the annual safety inspection.
I just
You know,
remember that.
if employees change, you're really talking about we're talking about the DMV employee. And it could be you today, and it could be me tomorrow.
Or website.
Yeah, so,
In this conversation with Mike Smith yesterday, he seemed interested in just having the latitude to be able to include like a simple URL or even a QR code that would land them on the page with all the relevant contact information. So my only hesitation is if this says for whom or a person or specific name, that's a lot less versatile than a URL.
that's what I guess.
How about this? The Department of Motor Vehicles shall include how to contact the Department of Motor Vehicles with questions.
Oh,
about
I
the
like
annual-
that, Anthea.
How to contact.
Because for whom is just, well, first of all, it can change. Well, obviously the system would have to change.
Okay.
Would the response be within a short period of time? Because you think it'd be easy to get a hold of someone and get an answer immediately while you're at the inspection place, or would it be a 2-day affair? Or
That's when they call their legislator.
Well, I have to say the testimony we got from Bob Church indicated a very swift and a very positive response to someone who had a complaint about shocks.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know as if it needs to be prescriptive. It's not.
okay,
So the response.
because I'd hate to have someone wait 2 days or something to get an answer.
Well, I don't know if they can give, I don't know whether somebody would be immediately there to take your call,
Right,
but
this is just how to put the complaint in. 'Cause right now, they would have to just think to go Google it.
and they wouldn't know that there wasn't a way to complain.
Right.
On the failure sheet
Yeah.
that they're looking at.
That's what it is, yeah, the failure sheet, yeah. That can be your lasting legacy.
Is everybody okay with that? You okay with that?
And I got an email from Commissioner Minoli saying that they would include the division, the contact information for the division, not for like an actual person. And I did just send her the blue light language. And she is listening. She emailed me first to say she is listening. Okay, so what you didn't have me go through yesterday was the new brake rotor language. So you have a legislative intent section saying it is the intent of the General Assembly, and I'm on the bottom of page 5 into page 6. It is the intent of the General Assembly that, and there are 2 pieces to the intent, the Department of Motor Vehicles needs to provide information on the existing definition of rust in the periodic inspection manual, and that's the code of Vermont rules citation to it, and then includes in the language what the existing definition of rust is, which is a condition of any swelling, delamination, or pitting to all inspection mechanics certified by the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles. So is there consistency amongst inspection stations in how the periodic inspection manual is interpreted and applied? So that's your first, it is our intent that they will contact all the certified inspection stations to say, this is the definition of rust. It's also your intent that the presence of rust on brake rotors by itself does not constitute a failure for purposes of the annual safety inspection that's required under statute. And that says that it only looks at safety issues, and that the presence of rust that is temporary, also known as surface rust, which sometimes results from the vehicle being parked for a period of time.
Man, you picked up everything here, didn't you?
Tried, which sometimes results from the vehicle being parked for a period of time, not be sufficient for a motor vehicle to fail inspection because such rust does not cause diminished braking performance that prevents a motor vehicle from adequately stopping. What it doesn't include is anything on the inspection mechanic making the determination that it is not diminishing braking performance. But it is your intent that this sort of rust that does not diminish braking performance, whoever's determining that, not be sufficient to fail. Not changing the periodic inspection manual in any way, not changing statute in any way, not telling the Department of Motor Vehicles to change the periodic inspection manual. What you are telling them to do in subsection B is to issue a clarifying administrative bulletin to all inspection mechanics that, one, details the rejection criteria for rotors and drums in the periodic inspection manual, presumably picking up on this is actually the definition of rust, and explains the difference between surface rust and rust that is considerable for purposes of determining if the rejection criteria is met. And that requires that the existing rust be a condition of any swelling, delamination, or pitting. So picking up on the definition again. And finally, providing information that an inspection mechanic should provide to the owners of a vehicle that fails inspection because of rusting on rotors and drums.
Any questions on that?
And I think that should be
Make it a little
the
clearer.
owner of the vehicle.
We talked a lot about it, but this is the specific language.
I think this is a step forward.
Yeah, and since that takes effect,
That takes effect on passage.
what since the tinted language is of 2026,
Yeah.
before they have to change the manual, if we need to do something change, if we keep getting these calls from constituents, then we could maybe include that in the manual. Okay.
Along with the
Along with the other.
And then when the sound report
Yeah.
comes out, we might have something else there.
So the language that you just saw, that would take effect on July 1, 2024, not passage. Sections 13B and 13C on tinting. 13B is what amends statute on tinting, and 13C is what requires rulemaking, or is the legislative intent. That takes effect on July 1, 2026. The rulemaking language is linked to the effective date of section 13B. So it's saying that the update to the periodic inspection manual that's consistent with 13C, that this is a safety issue, is to be effective not later than the effective date of section 13B. So they need to have the rules updated to be effective not later than July 1 of 2026. And then for purposes of the outreach that needs to be done, the outreach needs to happen not later than 2 months before July 1 of 2026. So you would have the rule being effective on July 1 of 2026, and they need to do 2 months of outreach before that.
But the impact isn't for the consumer. Let's say you have a St. Bernard and you have your tinted windows, that doesn't affect you until,
July 1 of 2026. But
And
I
then it
will
would not,
say,
if you met that standard, that your tinting met the
Yeah.
standard, that met,
Right.
the automobile manufacturers are permitted to have.
yeah, so it could be that the St. Bernard is actually in a better situation come July 1 of 2026 if it's in a vehicle that the manufacturer didn't apply tint to, because at present,
right,
you can't put that up to 70% tinting on that vehicle because it's adhered to
70% it takes 70% light.
transmission.
Okay.
So you might be helping the St. Bernard if this was effective
Well,
sooner than
That
July 1
specific
of
St. Bernard is
2026.
beyond help, but there could be other St. Bernards, yes. There could be other St. Bernards that we need to.
But that's a good point, that we're really updating our language to allow for what's really happening already, and it's
Which
more fair.
legally is not permitted.
Right, and I think the Senator Ingalls point before about how the impact on some of the businesses, and that we heard from, I think this should help them be clear and aligned up with, not all states, some other states are allowed, but most states allow some.
And to clear out some inventory on vehicles that are whatever, that are gonna fall not in compliance with the rules, so that people, like I said, that can only afford the car that they can drive, not be, not inspected because of.
So
All right, so now,
this is this version,
Is not everything. So what needs to
this
happen,
needs to go together.
yes, that needs to get added in, and you need to hopefully hear back from the DMV that's listening on the new language for the permit for the personally owned certified law enforcement vehicle. Make sure they're okay with what's on page 15 of the 32-page document. After I finish testifying, we're going to move on to our next topic on the BGS fleet piece. I will go back to my office, I will combine the two documents, and I will get this edited quickly, and I will come back with the amendment that you can
Okay,
actually
and then we
vote
can
on.
vote on it then, so we can have Commissioner BGS give us the update to that. Do you want to tell us anything about what the commissioner is going to talk about?
Yeah, I can do like a little quick overview of just sort of what happened in 2019.
Good old days.
So I have just a little one-page handout.
This is back when.
Yeah,
Are
So-
you listening, Tim?
this was my
This is
first,
your legacy.
this was my first year on the committee.
So what I have at the top is what 29 VSA section 903 subsection G says. The Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, when purchasing or leasing vehicles for state use, shall to the maximum extent practicable purchase or lease hybrid or plug-in electric vehicles, and there's a definition for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles in Title 23, but in no instance shall less than 75% of the vehicles annually purchased or leased be hybrid or plug-in electric vehicles. The Commissioner shall, whenever possible, and provided that the vehicles are comparable and meet the state's needs, purchase or lease the lowest cost year of the selected make and model, and only the latest year model when it is the least expensive. So how did you get here? In 2019, there were 2 amendments to this section. The first was effective on 7/1/2019. That, for I think purposes of your discussion here, shifted to that 50%. It used to be you need to consider using alternative fuels if it's suitable, but there was no like percentage minimum. And then what was effective on sorry, that's a typo, it should be 7/1/20. I was moving very quickly this morning. I'll change that and get it reposted. Effective on 7/1/20, that upped the 50% to what it is currently, which is the 75% amount. In the T-bill starting in 2019, in your summary section, you would have me reach out to the administration to get information on what the current makeup of the fleet was in 2019, and then in 2020, 21, 22, and 23, what the expectation was. And I just included that here since it was easy for me to pull from the T-bill, so you can sort of see historically what BGS expected to add in terms of plug-in hybrid electrics and battery electrics. And since I think this is the first time I've talked to you about this year, just as a reminder, plug-in electric vehicles is the like umbrella term that's going to cover your plug-in hybrid electric vehicle that can run on gas or electricity. So it's going to have a place to plug in the charge, a place to put in gas, and a battery electric vehicle, also known as an all-electric vehicle. You can't put gas into that. That's just going to be charged in with electricity. So when you see in 903 subsection G that they are to purchase or lease hybrid or plug-in electric vehicles, that's covering like the traditional Prius, only runs on gas but has the regenerative braking, the Prius Prime plug-in electric vehicle, and then like your Tesla, the battery electric vehicle. So that's what's covered by the 50%.
And the 75% was, when did that?
2020.
2020.
Yeah, so there was 1 year where it was 50%, so you upped it to
Okay. I thought there
50%.
was more steps, but it was just
No,
one
it's just the
step.
2 steps, yeah.
Okay.
And I will get this corrected, but if you want to just change it on what you have at the top of page 2, that should say 7/1/20, not 7/1/19. And Megan, I will get you a replacement copy.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Question, I'm just looking at it now. Only the latest year model when it's the least expensive. So we're still talking about new vehicle, it's just, if they're still the prior year cars on the lot, they're not,
getting the new one unless it's cheaper or there is.
we aren't forcing them to buy used cars.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that was our intent, but it's, I don't know what I guess when they're trying to dump new vehicles, you would know this, Russ, at the end, before the new ones come in. Or trying to, the new ones are coming in and you want to get rid of the old inventory that,
I think that all of the vehicles now are starting to get less expensive, and that it's starting to go back to whatever normal was, and including electric vehicles. I think that even Tesla is understanding that people aren't willing to pay more because it's electric, and I think that market's starting to even out a little bit.
I was just thinking in current inventory and the new model year, you have sales to get rid of the.
Absolutely. I had a friend that bought a vehicle, actually just numbers are numbers, right? had a friend that just, had ordered a new Cadillac Escalade, and he was upset because it was almost a year old, so he ordered the brand new one. That was the model year, same exact thing, and it cost him $17,000 more to get one that was a 24 versus a 23, or a 25 or a 24.
It's essentially the same.
It's the same thing, but to him, it was important enough to get the 25, and it cost him $17,000 more. So yes, your point is very accurate.
Okay, so we'll expect to see you back here.
Yes, I will be back
So
here.
we can vote out the DMV bill.
Yeah, and the one other thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the light language, I have been in contact with Bridget. She is the lobbyist for the Alliance for the car manufacturers on the blue light piece, and she did send me an article that I haven't read about like legislation that was introduced in Pennsylvania, getting at like the angles of the beams of headlights that like make it appear blue. So I think you Vermonters are not like in the minority in noticing this, and it's an issue that's being looked at by other states and on a federal level. So,
Well, I just wanted her to check with her clients to make sure we weren't getting conflicting with the federal.
yeah, and I have not heard from her. We emailed and she has sent my email to them that they have a concern with it, but she also sent me this article being like, this is something that's going on in other states.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, no problem. So I will be back in a little bit with your updated draft, and hopefully I will hear from the DMV between now and then on the law enforcement permits.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Fitch, sorry for making you wait.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, it's really nice to see you.
Morning.
I miss you in Senate institutions.
Yeah, it's me too. I'll be there.
You're looking good.
Staying out of trouble.
So for the record, my name is Jennifer Fitch. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Buildings and General Services. And with me today, I have a couple of other BGS employees. Kate, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, I'm Kate Everly. I work in Director of Communications and Legislative Affairs for BGS.
And Deb, can you introduce yourself?
I am Deb Farrell. I'm the Director of Government Business Services, which includes print, postal, surplus property, fleet program, and the information centers.
Commissioner Fitch, what kind of car you drive?
What are you saying? Oh, what kind of car am I driving? Good question. And actually the rust is a great thing to talk about. So I have a 2012 Honda CRV, and buying cars, I heard your statement, but for us, it is cost prohibitive, like it is for most people. And so I'm getting to the point where I was told that because of my rust, I only can drive it another year, which puts me in a pinch point to get a new vehicle. When I get a new vehicle, I do plan on getting a hybrid CRV, but the former style or the older style, which is the one that regenerates the battery upon braking. I'm local here in Montpelier. As you know, there's lots of hills. So you do a lot of braking in Montpelier, and I only go short distances. So for me, that's actually a really great option. So I will be buying a new vehicle. It will be expensive. I'm not looking for
We'll have to put an extra one in the fleet for you, you know, just add one, that's all. Yeah.
I would appreciate that. Then I don't have to pay personally, right?
And so just a staff question, is Eric Philcorn still there, or did he move to another?
So that is a great question. So Eric Philcorn is still considered a BGS employee, but he has been deployed to the flood recovery team. Kate is now filling in. She came in as the Director of Communications, and since Eric has been redeployed, Kate is also handling legislative affairs as well. So she's wearing many hats and she's working a lot of hours.
So if we have complaints, we talk to Kate?
Yes, I hope there aren't any complaints, but yes, that is who you would talk to.
Okay.
And do you have a definition of legislative affairs?
Legislative affairs is, for lack of a better term, a principal assistant. So doing basically everything Eric used to do, plus she's also focusing on communications. She has a big workload, but she's doing a fantastic job. So with that, can we pull up I don't know who's driving the presentation.
I'm driving.
Okay, perfect.
Feels like there's a draft in here, don't you? Yeah, my ankles are getting cold.
It's not on.
Well, if you'd like to
Ours
keep
on
on, I was gonna
yesterday.
say,
This happened
you've
last.
got the right person in the room for
This
that.
happened another time that the commissioner was in, it was like,
Is that which?
Is it 68? I'm going to 70.
All right. Let's see, it just feels like we're
I
generating.
think sometimes I've sat over there, sometimes you just feel colder.
I'm impressed you know how to do that.
I like to press buttons.
Okay,
Okay, so this is our, just first introductory slide, and so if we want to go to the next one, Kate. So, as I said, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Buildings and General Services. General Services provides a suite of services to support state government operations. The State House that you're in today is part of our Fee for Space program. This is a state-owned building underneath the jurisdiction of the BGS Commissioner. The prints that you normally get in the morning come from Centralized Print and Postal out of Middlesex. And we have lots of other services that we provide. I'm specifically here today to talk about the state's fleet program. What's really important to know about the fleet program is it's very similar to the Office of Purchasing and Contracting, which also falls under BGS, which means we provide centralized fleet services for all state agencies and departments, but there are a few carve-outs for other agencies within state government. So for example, VTrans, Fish and Wildlife, Law Enforcement, and the Department of, I'm gonna say it wrong, it's not public service, DPS, why can't I think of their
Public
acronym?
safety.
What, public safety, there we go. Are the three that have their own exemptions and can purchase fleet for themselves. There are times though when those groups choose to go through us because they'd like to, and there's times where those groups choose to be on their own for various reasons. So basically our fleet management services program is broken up into two services. One are leased vehicles, so we'll lease a vehicle to an employee or a department. We also have the fleet motor pool, much like going to Hertz and renting a vehicle for the day. We have 7 motor pool locations across the state. One of them is currently stationed at 108 Cherry. As we sell that building, we are looking to relocate that to what will be new lease space for client services in the Burlington area, which will be at 128 Lakeside Avenue. So that one is moving. So 29 agencies and departments are assigned vehicles, as I said, and we work very closely with them to understand their programmatic needs and what they'll be doing with that vehicle to make sure that we get them the right vehicle, basically for the service that they are providing. Currently, 35% of the 369 vehicles in the fleet are hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or all electric. And we've been increasing that from 25% of the fleet in 2023. And then our mission is to provide safe, economical vehicles for state business use and reduce the environmental impact of state travel. And we're going to dive into the 75% and where we're on with that. Next slide, please. Oh, it's behind me, so I have to run my own. Sorry, not plugged in. So as Ledge Counsel, I don't know her name, unfortunately, indicated, with Vermont Statute 29 VSA 903, 75% of new state vehicles purchased annually must be hybrid or plug-in vehicles. And then there's some additional information on the slide. And this is all part of the Vermont Comprehensive Energy Plan as well, in that, again, our goal is to electrify the fleet as we can. Next slide. So this just kind of gives you an idea of our mix of vehicles today. As I said, there are 393, I'm having a hard time talking today. There's 693 vehicles underneath our fleet program. And as it stands today, 65% of that is the internal combustion engine, and then 35% of that is hybrid and fully electric vehicles. Something that's really important to note in all of this switching out of the vehicles over time is we either use 6 years or we use 80,000 miles in terms of when we're going to switch out that vehicle. All that being said, which is going to play into our ability or inability to continue to electrify the fleet, is to say this. As we all know, during the pandemic, a couple of things happened. One, we had huge supply chain issues, which means we were trying to order vehicles and we just simply couldn't. We do have contracts with local vehicle suppliers throughout the state. And basically where you used to have a couple of weeks to order your vehicles, you literally had to go online and you had 5 minutes. And even when you put in your order, you may or you may not get your order filled. And Harmony Wilder, who was our prior fleet manager, who has moved on to the financial services division, also within the agency of administration, would do everything she could do, making personal phone calls, trying her very best to make sure that orders were fulfilled. But unfortunately, that's not something that we have complete influence over.
Is that getting better or is it still a problem?
So it's starting to get better. We are still struggling with supply chain. We're still struggling with our orders. And even when we put our orders in, and we have some information on this at a later slide, they still may say, sorry, I know you put that order in, but we can't fulfill that order. So we're still really struggling with our ability to procure both hybrid and fully electric vehicles. So I'll make sure I'm on the next slide. So, from FY19 to FY23 new vehicles, so this is just giving you some statistics on where we're at. Again, 3% are the internal combustion engines, 46% are the, I'm really struggling right now. 46%, sorry, I've been in lots of testimony all over the building this morning. So 46%, let me slow down, are internal combustion engines. 3% are battery electric vehicles. Those are fully electrified vehicles. And 51% are the plug-in hybrid vehicles and the hybrid electric vehicles.
Do you know, like, is it mostly hybrids for that 51%? Do you know how many are plug-in?
Yeah, so this is another really good sticking point for our program, and I'm really happy you asked that question. So there's two things going on. Supply chain is one, and we don't have a ton of influence over that. And we really lack electrical vehicle supply equipment across the state. So we'll talk a little bit about our efforts to continue to install those. But if we don't have a place to charge them, then we can't deploy a car that requires it being plugged in, right, in order to work. And so that is definitely a barrier for us today. As you know, there's an infusion of money into the state of Vermont to install EVSEs, and we recently got $1 million in the FY24 capital bill, as well as we applied for a grant through ACCD. They received money through ARPA funds, and they are planning to award us $500,000. In addition to that, we are modifying our design standards. So now whenever we're doing a major renovation to a building or we're doing a new build, we are installing a certain number of EVSEs. So we are doing our due diligence to try to, again, grow the number of charging stations that we have across the state, but it takes time.
Just to follow up on that, has that been a problem with state workers when they get a car out of the motor pool? Either that they don't want an electric car because they don't have to worry about where to go, or just that they hadn't thought about it and they go to a place and they're like, oh no, I can't get back.
So typically when you go in and you reserve a vehicle through Fleet, there is a form that you fill out. And so based on, how far you're going to travel that day, and we do look at things like weather conditions, because again, in the wintertime, right, you can't get as far as you can when it's warmer because it draws on that battery. So
yes. Thankfully aware.
Yeah, and so we do look at range and how far they're going to go. We do look at where we have available charging infrastructure along the way. And then employees can say they have a preference over the type of vehicle they'd like to use. But generally speaking, we look at that preference. We also look at range, and then that's the vehicle that we then lease out or rent out for the day. I will tell you personally, this is just Jennifer Fitch, I get really nervous about fully EV cars. I'm a nervous driver anyway, and it's new technology for me. So I usually, when I rent a vehicle, say that I don't want a fully electrified vehicle. So I do think, if we're talking about me personally, but I represent other state employees, what we would like to do is we would like to start introducing employees to fully electrified vehicles to get them comfortable with it. And so we want to try to start doing some events basically over the summer months when we can, to go to different places in the state, and let's jump in a fully electric vehicle and let's see how you feel in that vehicle. Again, just getting people used to it, also plugging in the vehicle and just getting used to what that's like as well. So really helping with that change management to get people comfortable. I am one of those people. So I have asked my staff this summer to get me into a fully electric vehicle, and let's see how it goes. I want to go to a parking lot. Just like when I was 16 and learning to drive. Because the only other
Kirchlich is totally comfortable with his EV, aren't you?
Well, I've had it for years now.
Yeah. So sometimes it's just a matter, because I think people share that apprehension.
Right, and figuring out where to charge, I've kind of got a whole system.
Yeah, you have to plan. You do have to plan.
The other thing I've heard is that if you use different appliances in the car, you don't get the mileage. I mean, it cuts way down. So the mileage might stay 200 miles, but if you're using the air conditioning or the heater, that cuts it down dramatically. Is that true or false?
It's true.
Yeah,
It is
that's
true.
You have to be aware of that. And the cars are getting better about feeding that information
And
back.
whether you're on a flat trip like Nebraska, or whether you're going up through the White Mountains.
Whether it's
you know.
10 below or.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the other thing that I would say, because Eric Philcorn does have, I think he has 2 now fully electric vehicles, as far as I know. And I've been with him when he's driving his personal vehicle. So they are also very quiet, which is nice. But I'll tell you, you put your foot on what I would call the gas, which is probably not technically what it's called in a fully EV, and you're flying. You're flying. You're like in a spaceship. So, you do have to get used to putting your foot down and how fast are you really going to accelerate in those vehicles. They're very whippy, that's for sure. So in FY23, for new vehicles, we were able to purchase 62% of the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles. Again, one is required to be plugged in and the other one charges on the battery. And we did purchase 36% of the internal combustion engines. And then for battery fully electric vehicles, 2% of what we ordered for FY23 and were provided. So this is, we ordered them and they were provided to us, meaning they actually fulfilled the order.
So does this meet the 75%?
It does not meet the 75%. So
I just wondered if I was missing.
it's no, so it's if you add it up, right, 64%. We're getting close to that 75, but again, you'll see, and we can switch to the next slide. Once we get to a couple slides down, you'll see what's happening is we're ordering to meet that goal or exceed that goal, but it's not actually what's being provided to us in terms of the supply chain.
So it's more the supply chain than the order. I mean, because we had in the statute that in no instance shall be less than 75%. Which is kind of very inflexible language.
Sure, but here's the question that I would pose back to the committee, right? So the problem is that if we can't procure new vehicles, you're going to be holding on to the older vehicles for longer. The reason why we only like to go 6 years or 80,000 miles is because after that point, it becomes a lot more costly to the state of Vermont to maintain those vehicles. So really our 2 options are this. We can hold on to our existing fleet just to meet that 75% requirement, but now you're spending more money because those vehicles are older and they need more maintenance. Or we do our very best to try to purchase new vehicles and meet that 75%. We're doing everything we can, but again, when it comes to supply chain, there's only so much influence we have over our ability to procure those vehicles. So those are the toss-ups. Do we hold on and pay more money to meet the 75, or do we do our due diligence to try to hit that 75 to the best of our ability? At this point, Fleet is doing everything they can to try to hit that 75%, but buying new vehicles because, again, as I said, as the vehicles get older, they cost a lot more money to maintain. And generally speaking, they're not as efficient, right? Newer vehicles, generally speaking, get more efficient over time.
so we actually increased the 50 to 75% in 2020 during COVID.
So it looks like in 2020, and I think I remember Melody, right?
Harmony?
Harmony coming in and saying, sorry,
That's okay.
so that you met it in 2020, like you got the 75%, I think. So it just kind of looks like from the graph too, but then when we get COVID,
COVID has definitely been, I mean, and I think most of you, I mean, if anybody's tried to buy a vehicle during the pandemic, it's been really hard.
So I'm shopping now for hybrids and they don't even have it on the lot. So it's hard to just test drive brand new hybrids or like electric vehicles.
And that's what we heard from Mileage Smart that was trying to get used cars, especially in these years. They're saying it's just, their testimony the other day was just like, they're just now starting to see that change a little bit. So I guess, I don't know, maybe this is what you're going to say, is that it seems like you're ordering the 75%, but just because the supply chains are not getting there.
That's right. So
You'll
we've
feel
been
like,
placing
well,
orders and then they've been canceling the orders, or they've been saying, instead of getting the 24 model, we're going to kick you out a year and we'll give you the 25 model when we get there. So, so it really isn't, it's not our staff. They're honestly doing everything they can to meet that requirement. And we feel passionate about that requirement, right? We have the energy office at BGS, and we are part of the solution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so we're very much partners in all of this. It just comes down to the vendors and fulfilling the orders.
Right, so I'm assuming you feel confident about hitting the 75% in the out years or in the next.
Whenever the supply chain, yes, it's all dependent on the supply chain, but and I do agree, supply chain has been getting better. It's certainly better this year overall, when we look at the last 2 years, so it is improving. I don't know at what point it will be very reliable where I can sit in a chair and absolutely guarantee you that every order we place will be fulfilled by the vendors.
Right, because you do have a slide on the orders for this fiscal year, last fiscal year,
Right, so if I need to make sure I'm moving with Kate. So here's our vehicle order data, right, for FY '23 and FY '24. And you can see that for EVs and hybrids, right, you can see how many have been canceled by the vendor versus how many have been delivered. And that pending delivery is the ones I'm talking about where they said, yeah, we've got your order, we'll fill it, but we're gonna kick it to next year. And then they say they kick it to next year and.
So what you're doing then, what are you doing right now? Are you prolonging the use of the vehicles you have because of the 75% constraint?
Well,
Or are you, what are you doing, I guess is
so
my
we're
question.
doing the best job we can do.
Or are you buying new regular gas or diesel vehicles?
So it's a mix of all of those things when it comes to managing the fleet, right? So we are trying to do our very best to hit the 75 or exceed the 75. And then it comes down to, will the orders be fulfilled or not? And when are we finding out that information? Because sometimes it takes a little while for them to get back to us. Like they may
Right,
say, yeah,
I
we're gonna
understand
deliver
that.
your vehicles, and then they don't. And then it's what we believe is pending in delivery. So it's all of the above. So for some of our vehicles, they're holding on to them longer because we can't replace them because we don't have, sufficient vehicles coming in. So we have to hold on to those vehicles for longer than we intended. So we are using that strategy, even though we don't love it. And then it's our ability to order and replace what we have. So right now, your typical combustion engines are the ones that are reliable on the market. So, and the other thing to note here too, is it comes down to which vehicles on the market can you get in hybrid or fully electric. So when you look at larger heavy vehicles like 3/4 ton trucks, for example, they're either not available on the market for hybrid or fully electric, or if they are on the market, they are exorbitantly expensive. So we also do look at the cost of a vehicle as well, because those costs of those vehicles get spread out to all the state agencies and departments to either lease the vehicles or pay the motor pool rate as well.
So I guess we have a statute here. You're giving us the reasons why we can't achieve the requirements. We have conditioning language, but you haven't got a lot of band there between maximum extent possible and having to start at the 75%. It means, you're saying the 75% isn't really
It's not feasible today.
feasible today. So, well, we have a lot of statutes around that probably are more aspirational, but.
It used to be more aspirational, and we tried to tighten it up, but I think because of all the cancellations, we can't blame EGS for that.
There's that optimism about the future that things are getting
Things are
better.
starting to get better. Definitely when we look at the last 2 years to today, things are getting better on the market. And I think you're seeing that in general if you're going to buy a vehicle today as well.
And I remember when
Are you gonna be a 3-vehicle family?
we're a 3-vehicle family, all EVs.
Some of your old car for my daughter. Some of your car.
Which old car?
Yeah.
Which old car?
Take your
Yeah.
pick. Take your pick, any pick.
Give her the Model T. When we talk about this,
She won't get picked up for speeding, I can assure you.
I remember, I think it was Senator Ash, but maybe it was the full committee talking at this time about the transition, or just when agencies ask for trucks, do they need trucks? At the time, there was a sense that not all vehicles needed to be trucks, but that there was a desire to have trucks. And so that made it, because at that time, there wasn't any electric trucks or even hybrid trucks. And so we thought, well, maybe part of the way you get to this way is like, well, does everybody really need a truck?
Yeah, so we definitely work with agencies and departments to get them, as I said before, right, to meet the programmatic needs, but it is required for them to basically tell us what they're gonna be doing with that vehicle. And then we make recommendations on the types of vehicles that, suit their needs. There are times where groups will push back on us about that. And then eventually, right, it goes between the commissioners or commissioner secretary, and we have those conversations at a very high level. But yes, we do try to right size the vehicle for the reason the vehicle is being used.
Okay.
So I did want to quickly touch on, because I said there is a nexus between the fully electric vehicles or plug-in vehicles and EVSE deployment. So again, this goes hand in hand between fleet and the energy office. They work together. And so we have been trying very hard to deploy more EVSEs throughout the state. Sometimes there's limitations, and an example of that is the money that we're getting through ACCD needs to be for both public use and state employee use, which means they're not fully dedicated to the fleet program. And the challenge there is that just like it is probably for you, if you have a fully plug-in vehicle, you show up to a charging station and it's either free or it's not. And that's the challenge without having dedicated fleet charging stations.
Or you have to wait and you're at work, you don't really want to wait. You want to charge your car.
That's right, because if you're using motor pool, for example, most of those people are doing it to drive from one state building to another. So if they're doing that and it's a range issue and you need to plug in your car to get back to where you started, then in theory you need to have, and maybe you're only in a meeting for an hour, or maybe you're only there for a couple of hours, right? So if that station is not available to you, you can't actually get back. And we have had certain situations where people have run out of battery and we've had to go get them. So that does happen in the state of Vermont. Again, we look at where they're going and we really try to make sure they get the right vehicle for them, but it does happen from time to time. So anyway, we've been working really closely hand in hand. We did get, if we go to the next slide, this kind of shows you on the map where we are today in terms of where we have EVSEs that we have installed and we own and we maintain. Throughout the state, you're seeing there's a lot of big holes there because we have 240 state buildings across the state and we have another 120 lease spaces for a total of 360 buildings, which is a lot. And so what we have done is we have been working hand in hand with both VTrans and ACCD. We are looking at where we currently have EVs, State of Vermont, BGS, where VTrans is planning to install them along the network, and then the types of grants that ACCD is giving out to other entities and where are those going. And then in addition to that, we've done a survey of state employees twice because we're trying to look at adoption, who's adopting, where do they work, where do we see a big demand in the near future. So our goal is to fill in the holes. So where EVSE infrastructure is really lacking in the state of Vermont. And so we're basically trying to do infill, and to the extent that we can infill in downtown locations, right? We do really want to make sure that to the extent that we can make these available to the public that we are, as well as state employees. Again, that creates a little conflict with fleet. So I'm going to have to mix in some fleet only ones as we continue to roll these out so that we can get to the ones that are plug-in and start really relying on those. So we, again, like I said, $500,000 from ACCD and then $1 million through the capital bill. We do have a proposal for locations for installation, and now we're handing those projects off to design and construction, where they will assign a project manager and we'll start installing them around the state. The other thing that's good to know is the money from ACCD is restricted to level 1 and level 2s. So I like to say level 1 is like a trickle charge, takes you about 8 hours. Yeah. Again, it depends on your vehicle, but on average, it takes about 8 hours to charge your vehicle. For a level 2, it's about 4 hours. Again, it depends on your vehicle, but about 4 hours. And so we can only do level 1s and level 2s. We are interested in sprinkling in some level 3s. Level 3s, you can charge your car in about 20 minutes or so. But we won't be able to do that with the ACCD funding. We would only be able to do that with the funding through the capital bill. Level 3s are a little tricky in that you shouldn't always charge your battery with level 3s because it can burn down your battery really quickly. So you should, and you can have, welcome to have some experts in, but we work with other experts that teach us so that we can put the right charging station in the right location for the right reasons. And so, but we do know sometimes there is a need around the state to very quickly charge your vehicle and be on your way. So we do want to sprinkle in. It does also require us to increase the electricity. So because it's such a high demand, you have to have a high electrical supply for that. So again, other considerations when we're looking at siting and what's available, what we may need to do to upgrade electrical. But we are doing all those things working hand in hand between those two programs, actually 3 programs, because design and construction is the one installing them. So again, we are very much in support of electrifying the fleet. We're very much in support of rolling out more electrical vehicle supply equipment across the state. We're working with all of our partners to do that work so we can make the greatest investments across the state of Vermont. So we're working hand in hand, which is great. And we are very much dedicated to meeting that 75% or more. Again, it's really just dependent on supply chain and again, what we have for charging equipment across the state of Vermont.
What is a smart station?
So a smart station is a station, so basically in really simple forms, level 1s typically don't have the ability because of the way that they work. It's usually just a plug. You can do a plug in a wall, right? So meaning you plug it in and it charges, but it doesn't have the ability to really collect any statistics. Where a level 2, and we're using ChargePoint currently, and you have them right out here on 134 State Street. Right. So when you plug in, it's measuring all sorts of things, which includes your electrical demand. So how much electricity is your car pulling and how quickly. It also knows when your car is done charging. It also knows how many people have charged on that station, for example, over time. And we're using that data so that we can figure out what to charge the recovery rate. So I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but several years ago, I think the 2 committees, House and Senate, put in language that required BGS to charge a fee for anyone that at a smart station where you could charge a fee.
Because we didn't charge here.
Because we used to not charge, and it took us a while because we had to look at statistics, and really all we want to do is just recover what we've spent. We're obviously not in the business to make money on these stations, right? We just want to get money back for what we're paying for ChargePoint, to both provide us the program and to maintain them, as well as the electrical supply that is being taken from our state buildings. And so that's how we came up with our rate, which I believe is 26 cents a kilowatt hour. We will continue to assess that rate over time as we continue to grow the infrastructure. And again, taking all those statistics from the smart stations on use, demand,
so
those
the
kinds of
non-smart
things.
stations assume are level 1s.
That's right.
Okay, so there's not really a lot of level 1s. Okay.
I'm glad you asked because I thought I should have known what a smart station was. But my next question, so how smart are they, and do they actually exchange data across the power thing that they can identify which car or which battery is actually plugging in, and they know that when that car comes back? Or are they just being, you said they can communicate with the battery and know how full the battery is?
That's right.
An identification of the battery, so they're knowing which cars are charging?
No. So it can just measure, electrical demand basically per the vehicle over time. So that's what it can record. And in order to use the stations, there's an app, right? And so there's an app that you use. You're in 6 apps. Okay. So we have an app for ChargePoint. So when you go over, you have to use your app. And then recently what the fleet has done to modify or change our practices for plug-in vehicles is that we used to have a fuel card. So when you go to the gas station, right, you use your fuel card, and that's how you fill your car, and then we back charge the agency or department for that charge. Well, we had to do the same thing for ChargePoint because, again, those vehicles are taking power right through the stations, and they are also paying to recover, just like if they went to the gas station and filled up on gas as well. So that was a change we made about 18 months ago with the fuel card.
There is telematics between the charge, like at Electrify America. If I plug in with my Ford, it knows it's me. I don't have to enter any data. I don't have to use my app or my key fob. It just says like, oh, that's Andrew Perchlik. We're going to charge your account. And it could just start charging. But it's only few cars, and then the EVSE company has to make that connection. But this was to your point, I think, that you've made about why can't we charge, but a charge for the T fund on the electricity, because they do have this communication. So they could say, oh, and you're.
You need every car to be regulated to require to identify themselves when they plug into a network, and then you got to somehow collect that data. And how do you do that with a home that doesn't have
right? And who's collecting it? How they're sharing it, and all that stuff.
I think that
can be done, it's just not easy.
I think that the part that they don't want to tell about that, because maybe their participation isn't as eager as what I'd like it to be, is that they keep on forgetting to tell us about the apps. The apps know. And that's, ultimately that's how you find out. And never mind that the cars usually will know as well, but that's not part of this discussion, but it was made part of it.
So big message is we're doing everything we can. We're very passionate in this area. We've got great partnerships across BGS as well as our other partners like VTrans and ACCD, both to electrify the fleet as well as continue to roll out EVSEs, which are also critical in us electrifying, right, our fleet as we move forward because they go hand in hand together.
Thank you. We'll probably just get another report next year and see where we are.
Well, like I said, again, happy to provide those statistics anytime. We really are doing the best job that we can. And the other problem we have is that, we have contracts with these vendors. Well, here's the thing, if you're willing to pay $5,000 more for a vehicle than what we have set in the contract, they're gonna sell you a vehicle and they're not gonna sell it to BGS.
I am not willing to pay $5,000.
Well, I'm not saying that you are, I'm just saying there are people that are willing to pay.
Senator Eagle's friend is buying all the cars.
If you're willing to pay a sticker, then we can't, we have locked in rates through our contracts, and so,
Okay, that's understandable. Senator Mazza, any other tough question you want to give the commissioner?
No, she did a good job like always.
Thank you. Sorry, I was tripped over myself there a little bit in the beginning. I have been running around and I had a ton of coffee this morning, so I'm talking a little faster than normal.
My speed.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I thought Anthea would be back for now, but.
Getting those listening versions, I think she's probably.
Okay.
Is this,
Okay, so
That is not mine. No.
we'll adjourn.
She said she didn't want it.
Didn't.